Welcome back to the Books Brothers podcast, the podcast where longtime friends spread across the country reconnect through the pages of a good book. Each episode, we dive into what we are reading, sharing our thoughts and perspectives, all while enjoying a few laughs along the way. Whether you're a big reader, or a little reader, or just enjoy listening in on our discussion, join us as we explore insightful topics and narratives while connecting each week. I'm Rob.
I'm Adam.
I'm Fliz.
And I'm Garrett.
And now a word from our sponsors. Are you and your spouse constantly bickering about whose turn it is to unload the dishwasher? What if we told you there's a solution? Now introducing the second dishwasher, the game-changing concept where you use two dishwashers, one for clean dishes, one for dirty. No more confusion, no more fights, just a smooth, stress-free kitchen routine. Second dishwasher, saving time, cabinet space, and marriages.
That's amazing.
Nice.
What do you do when they're both dirty? What's the solution there?
You get a third.
I remember, I think it was Ruth's junior year at Missouri State. It just makes me think of this every time I think of like clean, dirty dishes and stuff. But they had their dishwasher. They had like this Jesus magnet, and if the Jesus magnet was on the dishwasher, it meant that it was clean.
And then
that was really funny.
The devil one
if it
was
wasn't
on
there,
it,
it was
and then
dirty.
it was dirty.
If what was on it?
The devil one.
The devil. That would have made sense.
You dirty dish. All right, the one thing. So the third principle, turn toward each other instead of away, emphasizes the importance of responding positively to a partner's emotional bids for attention, affection, or support. How, or rather, whether we respond to emotional bids can play a significant role in determining the outcome of our marriage. In the Love Lab, couples who stayed married responded to bids 86% of the time, while those who divorced responded only 33% of the time. So, this stuff really matters. Let's get into it. But first, for our next segment, they don't make them like they used to. We are going to dive into the 90s were the golden age for the best TV shows and cartoons. Here are some standouts that you were sure to enjoy. Rugrats, Hey Arnold, The Simpsons, Pokemon, Friends, Full House, Saved by the Bell, and Home Improvement. What were some of your guys' favorites?
I think I mentioned it. You mentioned Saved by the Bell, and I think I talked about it last week because, I think some things have such a time and a place you think about. And I only ever remember watching Saved by the Bell before school. And I think it was like specifically like late elementary school and then middle school. And so it's just kind of funny to think of that memory of that. One that I would say was probably an all-time favorite of mine was Boy Meets World. And interestingly, Ruth and I, probably in like 2020, 2021, like during like the COVID time when you were like watching way more movies or TV shows and stuff, right?
Yep.
So we went back and watched it. She had never watched it. And so we went back and watched Boy Meets World. And I would say it still holds up. I think it's like funny to think about now. And there was one thing that we noticed in that, but also we rewatched Monk. I don't know if that was 90s. That might have been early 2000s.
Boy Meets World's the one with the what was it? The kid, Matthews kids?
Yeah, Ben Savage, I think, was the actor. But yeah, it was Corey Matthews and Topanga Lawrence and Eric and Feeney. Feeney was the big one.
Mr. Feeney.
The guy who somehow taught them from like third grade all the way through college, I think. I don't know how that worked.
But getting a promotion as the kid.
Seriously.
Like, hey, you're getting promoted to fourth grade next year.
But so one thing with watching that and then also with watching Monk that you just never see in TV anymore was kind of a similar trend of in Boy Meets World, one of the actors changed. Like it was the same person, but they had a different actor playing him in a different season. But it was still the same name and everything. And then the same thing was somewhat true with Monk because we went back and watched that too during that time period. And with Monk, it was a super long running show. It was like these like 30 episode seasons. And there was probably like 10 seasons. And some of the like villains come come back as a different person. So the same actor, but playing a different person, and vice versa, where they had like someone was supposed to be this person, but a different actor in the next season. So it's just, like, you never see that anymore in like the era of streaming. But back then, where it was like, oh, we're not going to run a rerun for a couple of years, it's like you could probably get away with it. Flez, what about you?
You were a big Friends guy, weren't you?
Oh yeah, I've seen each episode at least 10 times. I would say for
10
sure.
times?
Yeah, no, I'm not
Wow.
kidding either. Yeah.
How many seasons were there? How many episodes were there?
There's 10. There's 10 seasons. I
Oh
don't know.
my gosh.
10 might be
How many?
exaggerating a
At
little
least
bit.
like 15.
Yeah.
Per
I mean, I'm
season.
probably like that with The Office. Like I've watched The Office through probably 5 times now.
You know, I actually now, present time, I like The Office more than Friends, but I just have happened to have seen Friends more than The Office for sure. But
I always felt too young for it, but I mean, I think it makes sense. You've got the older siblings.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, 8-year older brother and 15-year older sister. But what about That 70s Show? And did you guys
Ooh.
watch Fresh Prince of Bel-Air?
That was a good one too.
Those are good ones.
That was a good
Oh,
one.
yeah.
I'm trying to think of
I
some
just
of these.
looked. There were 236 episodes, so you've seen
That's
it
so much.
23,600 times.
Easily.
No, 2,300,
No,
right?
didn't-
Not 23,000.
I didn't have cable in college, so you know. that's
I
all
think
did was
another
watch Friends.
another good one I think about is All That. It was like
Mm.
SNL for kids. It was just great.
What about Even Stevens?
I don't
You get into
Yeah,
some
I
Disney?
think-
I was looking into that really.
I watched it, but at the same time though, it's like none of the characters were really likable. Because like Shia LaBeouf was just like a little punk in the show, and it's like, yeah, his sister was like obviously super cute, but she was like made like a major nerd. She was. We all knew it. What was her name?
I don't know.
we can't forget about a couple. South Park.
Yeah, classic.
And then a different angle here is the Magic School Bus.
Oh
Yeah.
Just
There
like
you go.
the
I just
world would
remember
not be
the-
the same.
Well, and I think a Magic School Bus that brings back a little bit more nostalgia from the component of the teacher wheeling in the TV, and you're gonna watch the Magic School Bus or something else, but
Yeah.
like the TV on a
Yeah.
cart concept. Where it's like
right.
it's kind of funny to think about now.
That's hilarious.
You gotta love Home Improvement though, with the neighbor.
Mm.
You never got to see his
Mhm.
mouth,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
until
Good
like
concept.
the last episode.
Well, I mean that's like old school. He was in the last episode. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
But
he
that's kinda
finally
like,
came out and you got to see his mouth, I think.
I mean that's like kind of like Charlie Brown-esque, where like you never see the parents.
You know what's one show I never really? My dad watched it, and I watched a couple episodes here and there, but it's like one of the more famous ones is Seinfeld. I never really got into that.
I never got
Felt
into
like too
that.
early.
Yeah,
Yeah, I felt like
maybe a little
before
too
us.
early for us. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think it's on something though. I feel like we should go try to watch it and see how it is.
Yeah, I wonder how some of those ones hold up.
All right, good stuff. Walk down memory lane, boys. All right. So we'll jump into the third principle of the 7 principles of making marriage work by John Gottman. This one
Ooh.
is turn towards each other instead of away. And this one, like I said, focuses on emotional bids. So emotional bids are attempts made by one person to seek attention, connection, or emotional support from another. These bids can be verbal or nonverbal and may include things like sharing something personal, asking a question, or even making a playful gesture. Turning towards a partner means encouraging and responding to these bids with attentiveness and care. So turning towards each other refers to responding with interest, care, or empathy, but turning away happens when a person ignores, dismisses, or responds negatively to their partner's bids. Consistently turning toward your partner strengthens the emotional bond in a relationship. And then, the importance is on small moments. So small everyday moments of connection can make a big difference in a long-term satisfaction, right? Like if you're not consistently responding to your partner's emotional bids, it doesn't really allow for that intimacy or connection or friendship to really grow. And that Gottman also shows that a 5-to-1 ratio of positive to negative interaction predicts a strong, happy marriage. And we should avoid the 4 horsemen as well. So turning away from your partner can lead to criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling, the 4 horsemen that predict divorce. So it is important to be mindful of turning towards each other to help avoid these destructive patterns. So, getting into some of the questions here, on page 89, I found this quote very relatable or just interesting. So, the first step in turning toward each other is simply to be aware of how crucial these many moments are, not only to your marriage's trust level, but to its ongoing sense of romance. For many couples, just realizing that they shouldn't take their everyday interactions for granted makes an enormous difference in their relationship. Remind yourself that being helpful to each other will do far more for the strength and passion of your marriage than a 2-week Bahamas vacation. So my question is, have you ever caught yourself thinking that a vacation is the key to improving your relationship or marriage, instead of focusing on how to strengthen everyday connection? Why do we tend to glorify vacation life over the beauty of everyday life?
I think that a vacation just gives you time to pause. So you think that, you're going to have a vacation, you're going to have time to pause and be more present with each other.
Yeah.
So I feel like I feel like it would be easy to have that thought, but obviously it's best to have intentional practices of pausing in everyday life, because we don't always get vacations. If we're just waiting for a vacation, then does that mean we're going to only give our partner attention once or twice a year? So yeah, I mean, it's definitely should place importance on the everyday aspect of pausing and, placing attention on the other person. So
yeah. I mean, I think it's a good question, Rob. I definitely fall into this category. In the thought that once Ruth and I get away, things will be better, can go better. I don't feel like, I think maybe in the past there's been times where I've perhaps viewed it as a crutch of sorts. But I think generally speaking, my thought comes from a place of, as what like Adam is saying, is it's a more intentional time to kind of pause and get away. And to clarify too, when I refer to like vacations, what I'm thinking of is like a weekend camping trip or a day trip up to like Sedona or Flagstaff or something where we're spending time outside. But again, as Adam, as you mentioned, really what it is that intentionality. And I think I've always kind of had an issue with like being in the moment. I always am more of someone who I get really excited about what the future is. And then when the moment actually comes that I've been looking forward to, I'm like thinking about like, oh, is this fun? Are you enjoying this? Is this what you want it to be? And I think combating that has been always challenging, but I think especially now that we have, a daughter and, life circumstances are changing. Ruth is now a full-time stay-at-home mom. And I think some of these things, it's like, I've just felt my ability to attend to things has gotten worse in the last year or two. And I've tried to combat that. And one thing I've tried to do is making a goal to have one intentional like family time in the week. And it doesn't mean like I'm not spending other time with my family, but like one, like, hey, we're going to go do this specific outing or this specific activity. And I think that has been helpful because again, it's like really I know this is a me problem where I can't, again, as you mentioned, Adam, be intentional and kind of be in a moment.
Why do you think it's been more of a struggle over the last year?
I think probably like, and you and I have chatted about this some, where I think I feel a little bit more pressure when it comes to like my role in supporting the family. We've all talked about, the age of your 30s for guys being an era where it's hard not to get really career focused. And I remember like on Art of Manliness one time, he talked about how like the 30s for men tends to be their most like sad or depressed time of their life, which I'm like, yep, I see that. Like that's been true of me. So I think it's that. And then it's also, with Daphne now, like, I think like learning how to be intentional in a different way and kind of understanding the concepts of what being a good father looks like. But I mean, you hear dads all the time say like, oh, I just really look forward to whenever they're an age where they can do this or they can do this. And like, really, I've thought that, I've maybe even said that, but really what you're saying in that is like, or at least for me, it's like, I'm not really good at this stage. I'm excited for the next stage. And I think I'm better, but yeah, I think it's tough. I mean, yeah, I think it's tough. Have you felt that similarly as I described with work, with your kind of work and career changes over the last couple of years, or not as much?
As far as being able to stay more present and be intentional in my days.
Yeah.
I think that because I place so much attention on like my rituals,
Yeah.
you know, my rituals are meant to be good at being intentional. You know, they're meant to improve that in me, my ability to be intentional. I think that I've been able to maintain it a little bit better than probably most people because, you know, like Sarah saying things like early on in dating, like she said like the compliment of, you know, I never bring out my phone when we're hanging out, and it feels good that you're like always being attentive whenever we're hanging out.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have been that way a few years ago before I started all of my,
being more mindful
meditation practices and all that kind of stuff, and
yeah,
being intentional about it. But it's definitely, you know, moments of greater stress definitely makes it harder for sure in times, but you know, we're all human. It's, but I'm not that, you know, as deep into a relationship as you guys are. So we're still in kind of like a honeymoon phase for sure, where it's like, even if like one instance was lacking attention, I don't know. We haven't even really run into that yet. So
yeah,
hard to speak on that aspect of it, but, and I don't have kids. So I can't empathize with that.
Yeah. And I think too, it's like, I think all too often, and again, I really don't want to come across as like being complaining. I love having a daughter. It was something we prayed for and hoped for years, but yeah, it's definitely like made us have to be more intentional about spending time together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
yeah.
Rob, what about you in terms of that same question of, do you view vacations that way sometimes?
Not sometimes. We haven't. I mean, we've gone on a couple of trips, but we haven't been traveling a super ton over the past year.
Yeah.
But we're about to get into some travels too. But it's not like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to like, you know, grow with you. Like this is so necessary. We're just really excited to spend more time together. So we struggle, I think, with the falling into the trap of almost like delaying growth, because not delaying growth, but like we fall into the trap of, you know, our schedules sometimes can be like ships in the passing night, you know, with like I'm gone throughout the day. And then by the time I get home, like my wife is getting ready to go and rehearse and be in a show. Right. And so it's always like this, oh, I can't wait until like our schedules align, and then we can kind of be more like, we can focus more on our marriage. And there's like immense truth to that, right? Because like there are days where we don't see each other, you know, but 30 minutes. So like there's really not a ton of time to like physically work on our marriage in those times. But you know, when we get to the weekend, or like when we do have, you know, more time together, it's like that crutch of saying like, oh, I just can't wait until like we're both on the same schedule. Like that's kind of out of the window at that point, because like at that point we are on the same schedule. So just how do we maximize, you know, the time that we do have together with the variability in our schedules is something that, you know, we just have to really be super intentional and maximize on. Otherwise, if we were to be like, oh, I can't wait until summer, you know, or I can't wait until when you're not in a show, then it's like, you know, then you miss out on all the opportunities to grow up until that point, right? And to your point, Stalen, it's like there's so much pressure on those moments that it's kind of this built up expectations of, oh my gosh, like here we are, you know, like this has got to be perfect. And then, you know, maybe you find yourself fighting or whatever. And it's just like, you know, you put too much stock into waiting to grow rather than just growing, you know?
Yeah. Yep.
Let's take a quick break for a word from our sponsors.
Are you and your spouse in a marital rut, constantly fighting about the same old stuff? Socks on the floor, who forgot to take out the trash? Or do you just wish you could remember the last time you laughed together? Well, guess what? The ultimate solution is here. God. That's right. The big guy himself has been offering relationship advice for millennia, and he's ready to fix what's broken in your marriage. No therapist required. Call now, 1-800-GOD-HEALS. No need to schedule an appointment. He's always there.
And now back to the show.
So on page 91, the author mentions two obstacles that can get in the way of turning towards each other. Missing a bid because it's wrapped in anger or other negative emotion, such as, why don't you ever unload the dishwasher when I loaded it? What your spouse is really saying is, could you unload the dishwasher tonight? So like that was wrapped up in like some anger or negative emotion of like, why don't you? And then being distracted by the wired world. The author says that the old hiding behind the newspaper is now the equivalent of being on your phone. So the question is, have you encountered any recent situations where either or both of these obstacles prevented you from turning towards each other?
I mean, I think for Ruth and I, so I mentioned a bit ago that she's been doing the stay-at-home mom thing now for about a month, and it's been a very atypical month. The first week we had a friend in town, and then Daphne got pretty sick and was like sick most of the week with like fevers, and then she had a week where she was fine, and then she had the flu all last week, and I feel like it's not that I think at times individually like been kind of like giving into the wild world, but more recently it's been both of us like, hey, let's just watch TV tonight. Let's just watch a show. And it's been out of just like the comfort of it. Like, okay, it's been a tough week, which I think that is okay. And I think I need to be more open to like, hey, using the evenings to relax. But I think it's been something where it's like, it's gotten, for me, I think it's been, kind of we've been using that too much just to kind of veg out instead of connect when we've had a pretty challenging couple weeks.
Yeah. I think so. One of the things, so today's Ash Wednesday, so it's the start of Lent. So, one of the things that I'm giving up or trying to focus on, I'm actually doing one of the exercises from the first principle. It was like the 7-week program of,
oh, nice.
Of fondness and admiration. So, yeah, it's like a 7-week program. So I started day 1 today, but, yeah, I've just been noticing that I've been missing bids because my wife will be speaking to me and I'm, wrapped up in, I just got home, but I'm finishing up a conversation and then I missed out on some texts. So then I'm like tending to those when she's trying to like welcome me and be received by me when I come in, and it's like I'm distracted or I'm not fully present at the dinner table. So I'm really trying to adhere to some of the limits on like my phone and really being intentional about connection with the time that we do get. Also, there have been bids around, for example, Marianne's like one of her least favorite things to do when she wakes up on a weekend is come downstairs and see dishes in the sink, right? Especially if she's cooked on Friday night, for example. So, I've learned, and she has stated, and she also hasn't stated, but it's like, it's nice to be able to anticipate and know that bid has been placed there. And how can I, help set her up for a lovely Saturday morning by making sure that we take care of those either that night or, I'll wake up early and get going on breakfast, and then she'll come down and she won't, have to do anything like that. So
yeah, that's good.
Those are some recent situations.
Yeah, that's good.
Anything for you, Flez or Garrett?
I relate to this on both sides of the coin, whether it's saying something with a little bit of passive aggressiveness or wanting to address something or talk about something, but a TV show or the phone can just be an escape on either side.
Yeah, I think in reading this, and you hit exactly what I'm going to reference, Rob, where he mentions there might be a negative emotion tied to essentially a request or a question. The question might be as simple as like, fold the laundry or like switch the laundry over. But if there's a negative emotion tied to it, I am more prone. I think people in general are more prone to get defensive, to attack back, and that kind of thing. And I think the reality is, and we've all, I'm sure, experienced this, if instead you take that negative comment and say like, oh, it sounds like you want me to do this, you do it, the next time it's not as negative. And it's more like, your goal is not to inspire guilt in your partner with that, but it can. And that's not a bad thing. I think that sometimes like, a little, ooh, maybe I was a little harsh there, can be good to experience as a spouse, because then we're like, okay, like I came on strong. They're caring for me. They're loving for me. And I think for me, it's like, that's a really good reminder of keep it objective. Like, if there's a request in the negative emotion, like just focus on the request, try to honor the request. Because it's like, again, at the end of the day, and like, I think you mentioned at the very beginning, it's like the problem's the problem. Like the problem's never your partner. You're trying to grow together. You're trying to be happy together. And so if you can objectively like, okay, it sounds like you want this. Can I do that for you?
Yeah. And then it's important to not double down once you did it, right? Where you're basically like, hey, there you go. Hope you're happy, or something like that, obviously. But it's important, right, to recognize that, maybe they didn't actually mean to come off so harsh, or, just truly loving with just, doing and not expecting like, praise or admiration. But, I know that, there is the respect component as well. So, but yeah, at that point.
And again, I think it's tough. It's like, whenever you or feel like you're getting yelled at or treating unfairly, it's like, it's not always easy to be like, yeah, sure, honey. I think that's going to be true whether you're the wife or the husband. I think that's going to always be the case.
Yeah. I mean, if both folks are, they're willing to look, in the mirror and recognize when they could have done something better. Then it allows for growth on both sides, even if one partner does slip up in negativity and doesn't do 5-1 as Gottman recommends, but it's maybe this week I was 1-1 or maybe even 1-2, right? Like I was more negative than I was positive, but just being able to take a step back and want to see growth in it too.
Trying to relate to this from my standpoint of being in a relationship for 6 months, still being in the honeymoon phase. But so I can't really relate to like the dishwasher thing because we don't live together. But
that's good.
Ilias, amen.
What'd you say? Really is.
Hell yes.
But like being distracted by the wired world, kind of ironic me saying I was on my phone the other day after just talking about how I'm on my phone. But
snap.
Hear me out. All right. All right. So I get a text from my mom and she's like, hey, don't forget to submit your expenses for your FSA from last year. And I'm like, oh, crap. So it was like a light bulb in my brain. And when I have a task that I have to do, I like have to do it and get it all done right then and there. And so like I just immediately pulled out my phone and I was at Sarah's. We were hanging out in the morning. She was doing something else though. So I feel like there's kind of like a little leeway here. But I got on that app and I just started taking screenshots of receipts and uploading it into the app to get reimbursed for my FSA and all that stuff. And I was telling her as I was doing, I was like, yeah, this is awesome. I just got back $60 from last year. And then it was like 50. I was like, yeah, this is awesome. And I got done with it. And she's like, yeah, it's great. I just wish you maybe, if I were you, I probably would have waited until later to do that while we're hanging out.
It's like I'm in the scarcity loop.
So
I'm equivalent to slot machine right here. High repeatability.
There's another receipt.
High repeatability, unvariable or variable reward.
Like this last receipt was $1.80.
I gotta go again. I gotta go again.
But
no, it's funny. But yeah, I mean, that hits on exactly like that's her bid. Her bid is like, hey, like I'm here.
But I will say that like she's like, I know how you are. Like, I know how you get hyper fixated and hyper focused on things. And like, so she started off with like, she knows me. So like, I feel known.
Yeah.
And then she says what she wants, which is like, I highly respect that. Like, I think a lot of men and women oftentimes get into the habit of not saying what they want in a clear and respectful manner. And like, you know what I mean? Like, she wasn't passive aggressive. She said it in a loving way, you know what I mean? And I think it was really healthy. So it's a good experience for us.
I'm laughing at that because there's definitely been times with Ruth and I where I am frustrated and upset about something and end up having this like conversation that's filled with conflicts, and it's like 2 hours into the conversation and I'm like, oh, now I know what I wanted from this. And it's like I know it's, it's funny because I know that's me. Like, that's not me. Like, I have an emotion, I get frustrated, upset, and then it's like I can't pinpoint it, and so I just express frustration. And I think it's I feel like you have to just like learn and relearn that all the time.
Yeah.
All right, gents. Let's move on to the final question of the chapter 4. So exercise 2, starting on page 97, focuses on how to have stress-free or stress-reducing conversations that encourage active listening. It guides you on how to respond to each other's venting with empathy and without judgment. The series of steps goes as follows. Take turns, so give each other the floor. Show genuine interest. Stay focused on your partner and ask questions. Don't give unsolicited advice. Be a shoulder to lean on, not the problem solver. Communicate your understanding. Let your partner know you empathize with them. Take your partner's side. Express your support. Express a we against others attitude. This basically expresses solidarity to make sure your partner knows they are not alone. Show affection, such as holding your partner, telling them that you love them. And finally, validate the emotion. Let your partner know his or her feelings make sense to you. So what did you guys think of this section? How do you see these conversations play out in your marriage or relationship today? Are there any of these steps that you consistently succeed or fail at?
A lot of these deeply resonated in my life. The first one on the recipient side of listening is don't give unsolicited advice. That is probably a layup answer.
Yeah,
with
me too.
guys wanting to be problem solvers. And it took me a while to understand that. I still am not perfect, but when Brooke is talking about her day or a difficult patient or how she's just feeling being pregnant, a lot of times I can just default think of, hey, well, have you talked to your supervisor about this? Or I can try to get in, well, how can we strategize to make your day less stressful? And that's not the idea. It's just listening, empathizing, supporting. I also think of, on my side of things, feeling part 5 and 6, take your partner's side and express a we against others attitude. That's really big for me. Just feeling like I have someone in my corner, especially if I'm dealing with anxiety or recognizing that I'm not thinking through something probably the most normal, or just even if I've made a mistake, if I'm frustrated about something that happened at work and I'm partially or in the majority at fault, still knowing that she's supportive on my side, that really just means a lot to me. So there were a few that really stuck out. And then I would say validating. And I think that's on both sides. I think a lot of times it's like, oh yeah, the woman's the emotional one. Guys, we've talked about it. We're not as good with emotions, but it does really mean a lot when you're feeling a certain way and your spouse responds and is like, oh yeah, that I totally get that. That makes a ton of sense. That can be a very relieving experience. So I really enjoyed this section.
Now let me ask you this. So expressing a we against others attitude, that you said that was big for you. If your wife is seeking that, but you are the problem solver and you're like, oh, well, maybe I think you should have done this differently, or that other person may be wrong. Is it harder for you to like do that when you don't necessarily agree with maybe how your wife, like the situation that your wife's dealing with, or how she handled it or whatever? Like, is it harder to be like, yeah, that guy's a turd, when he might not actually be a turd? You know what I mean?
I get it. And
That's hard for me sometimes.
Yeah.
yeah, something that immediately came to mind was that conversation can take place, but perhaps waiting to have it for a later time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think as it relates to this, Garrett, I'm on a really similar page to you, where I think that I give too much advice right off the bat. And I think that I really appreciate that we versus others. And I think Ruth does a really good job of that. Of if I'm not doing well, I'm upset about something, Ruth is awesome, coming to my side and supporting in that. And like, even just in this conversation, I'm like, yeah, in giving advice, I'm doing the opposite, as you mentioned, Rob. And at times I'm taking the side of like, well, what did you like? Maybe but their thought that, with the the way they responded, though, can you understand where they're coming from? And it's like that doesn't help Ruth. And so, I think I see that and I need a better job. I think the two other thoughts I had with kind of this list here was it's a great list. It's great concepts. It's almost like you need to review some, like, we can all agree with this, by the way. Like, I think this is, it makes sense, but it's like, it'd be really great to read 5 minutes before you have the conflict, right? Because you don't think this way when you're upset about something.
Yeah.
But I remember
even after reading it a day later, I was like, okay, what did I read again?
Yeah.
What's the first thing I need to do?
Stop yelling at Marianne. But what it reminds me of, though, too, is my in doing physical therapy. I think that the best like continuing education course I ever did was a course on interviewing, and it was patient interviewing, and kind of think motivational interviewing and that kind of thing. And a lot of it was along these lines of empathize with your patient, like take the side of your patient. Like if they want to like be upset about something, be upset at it with them. And I still remember before that class started, it was a guy within my company at the time, which was a big national company and great communicator. And I remember him saying, this class, I believe, won't just help you in the clinic, but it will also help you in your homes. And I was like, yeah. And I think like, here we are, it's probably been 6 years ago. And I still think like, yeah, some of the things we said were, the one I always go back to is like, when if a patient, and again, we're going to compare it to like your spouse is like telling this awful scenario or something sad or they're upset about, whether you think it or not, like the right answer is that sucks. And I feel like I try to incorporate that. Like I don't do it excellently, but try to be like, yeah, that really sucks. I'm sorry.
I need to focus on, yes, the unsolicited advice, but the step before that shows genuine interest. Stay focused on your partner and ask questions. I think sometimes because I go, like, I'm very objective, so I'm hearing the story. I'm trying to root cause, corrective action it already, where it's like, ooh, yeah, like we could have done this or that. Or what do you think about this? And so in that processing, I'm losing interest in everything that comes like after a point, And then with that, I can't communicate my understanding because she might already be talking about X, Y, and Z, but I'm still focused on A, B, C, D, E, F, And so I think this is helpful. And yes, Dalen, I agree. It almost feels like I should just, keep it in my back pocket at all times. But I'm motivated by, reading this, and
it's good.
I want to look forward to the next conversations that we have where I can really implement this. Not as like a, checkbox, like I got to do it, but just, yeah, like being able to really be there for your spouse when they need them and to show up. And sometimes I think a lot of our fights or frustrations can start from you just weren't present in that conversation.
Yeah.
And you didn't show up for me. And that's what our spouses need, is someone to show up with them so that they can navigate life together and not, be a bunch of problem solvers that never empathize with them.
That's good.
Good.
Well, has anything to add into there, brother?
I don't have like specific situations that you guys do because you've been with your spouses for a long time. We're in the honeymoon phase, like, and don't live together. But I think that I love
You're in the
Sarah.
lovebird stage.
I think that some of the reasons why I love her is because I respect her so much. I think she's got like she works directly with her company's CEO and CIO daily and like does things for them, and they like praise her. She's really smart. She is very wise. I'll say something and she'll have like a perfect answer for it, or like in a text message or whatever if I'm having a bad day. She makes it easy to do things like take turns, because I find what she does for work so interesting. It's easy to just sit back and listen to her talk about it. And then in the past, I think with combination of just having like a little bit of ADHD type stuff, I feel like I tend to want to like jump in whenever I feel like I'm thinking the same thing as the other person and I want to finish what they're saying. I think everybody does that a little bit, but it's something I've had to work on, not in like relationship stuff, but in general.
Yeah.
And so I don't do that with her. Definitely show genuine interest. She does that with me. Unsolicited advice. I would say that I definitely probably do that. I just can't think of any specific examples off the top of my head right now with her. I think we all probably do that to an extent. Empathy, I could definitely do better with that for sure. Sometimes it's just like if I like have a moral like conviction about something, I just can't not deviate from that. Yeah, I think that we right now do a good job of listening to each other.
It's good.
Validating each other's emotions. Sometimes I have emotional dysregulation and I'm not that great at it, but most of the time I am. So
Yeah.
I think we're on a good path.
Good.
Right on. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Books Brothers podcast. Join us next week as we discuss part 7, principle 4, let your partner influence you, of the 7 principles of making marriage work. If you've enjoyed listening or benefited from our conversation, please subscribe, give us a review, and share with a friend that you want to connect deeper with. Lastly, we would love to hear your thoughts. You can reach us by email at connect@booksbrotherspodcast.com or on Instagram at Books Brothers Podcast. Until next week, read, reflect, and connect.